Shabbat Shalom, Mayafe Hayom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. It's very special to be opening this Kabbalat Shabbat service here from Birmingham in a sanctuary that hasn't been used for many months except for High Holy Days. And now I'm here and with you all as well at the same time through the wonders of Zoom. And thanks to the wonders of Zoom, I also had a very beautiful experience just an hour ago when I joined a Kabbalat Shabbat service in Kibbutz Lotan in the very south of Israel, led by my daughter Tali and Lillian Crane-Newman from the Liberal Jewish Synagogue and young people from RSY Netzer and South Africa Netzer who were there on their gap year after a long wait due to COVID. And it seems appropriate to pay tribute to Rebecca, who I saw as part of the congregation, and all of LJY Netzer, who helped them get there, but not only helped them, but through the many years of experience of LJY Netzer, gave them the confidence to be able to lead the Kabbalah Shabbat service in Kibbutz Lotan. And before continuing with the service, I want to go from the youngest members of our movement to one of the oldest, if not the oldest, and somebody who's been part of our congregation, at the heart of our congregation, for more than 70 years, and is now approaching her 100th birthday in a couple of weeks' time. And that is Ruth Shire. Our prayers to welcome Shabbat, our Kabbalat Shabbat literally means that, are about welcoming. The Shalom Aleichem, which will be sung in a moment, says to the angels who we imagine are entering our homes and our sanctuaries for the Shabbat, we say to them, Barachem l'shalom, come in peace. And in the Lecha Dodi, we consider the Shabbat as a bride and turn to our doors to welcome her into our sanctuaries and our homes again. And so that spirit of welcome, that spirit of hospitality, is at the heart of Shabbat. And many years ago, when I first came to Birmingham as a student, it was Ruth and Hein Shire who welcomed me, who offered me hospitality in their homes on Shabbat. And Ruth remains warm and welcoming. Just before COVID, she was welcoming our BPS reading group to her home, always with generous hospitality. Michael is going to say more about her and Heinz's involvement shortly, but as just before Ruth blesses the candles, I want to bless you, Ruth, by saying, "May the angels of Shabbat, who we're about to welcome, bless you always with peace. And may your home and the homes of your children and of Miriam, where you are now, always be the sanctuaries of holiness that you have created, that you created for them, your children growing up, and which you have made a very special place for all your visitors over all the years." And now Michael is going to say a little bit too.
Greetings to all of our Liberal Judaism friends. I'm speaking to you from Boston in the United States, where my family are here for this special celebration of the LJ Biennial and also, of course, of my forthcoming mother's birthday. Mum, we celebrate your upcoming 100th year with great joy and family togetherness, along with all of the liberal movement gathered here together. You and my late father, Dr. Heinz Shire, attended, I think, every single LJ Biennial since they started in Cheltenham in 1977. He wouldn't have missed one for the world, and neither do you. And we all remember him with love and admiration. In your childhood, you saw the end of the Spanish flu. And now, thankfully, you're seeing the end of the COVID pandemic. And maybe that is why you were destined to become a nurse and offer comfort and healing to all those through many decades. You didn't grow up to be a liberal Jew, but leaving Germany and coming to England and meeting Heinz was the beginning of a lifelong devotion to progressive, pious, and positive Judaism. Getting married into the Shire family entailed a meeting with Lily Montague at Red Lodge, where, being impressed with this new doctor-nurse couple, she officiated as your rabbi at your chuppah in the still bomb-devastated building of the LJS. You have engaged with progressive Judaism and Birmingham Progressive Synagogue, Birmingham Liberal Synagogue, over 70 years, as Margaret said, in so many different ways. First, by loaning out Heinz to every conceivable committee and council, and then yourself taking up the mantle of synagogue librarian for so many years, opening your home, and of course, pre-COVID, there was not a Shabbat when you were not in your pew at BPS. And if you were not there, you were at Oxford with Miriam and with Nick. Breaking down walls is something you do instinctively. When you were invited to speak to new Syrian refugees in Birmingham, you said, I quote, "I address you as the oldest refugee in Birmingham to the newest ones. You are welcome here as I and my husband were made welcome. But we then made our contribution to the betterment of the city, as you can do now too, and Birmingham will be the better for it. And so it is. Keep breaking down those walls, Mum. Happy, happy birthday." This is truly a Shabbat of delight, the Karata Shabbat Oneg, the lights you're about to kindle for us, and everyone else may kindle as well, are a symbol of our joy this Shabbat at our special LJ. May their brightness lift our spirits, and may our hearts with happiness and peace.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe. You sanctify us by your commandments and enjoin us to kindle the Sabbath lights. Amen.
Now, again.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom
As we sing Yedid Nefesh, a song of longing for God on this holy day, please do join in with me in your homes. Yedid Nefesh, Avarach Mashach Avdecha Eretzonecha. Yarutz Avdecha Kamoyal Yishtachave El Mul Hatarecha Yerav Lo Yeditotecha Mino Vetzov V'chol Tam Yigalena Ufras Chavivi Alai Etzukat Shalomach Ta'ir Eretz Mikvotecha Nagila V'nismach Bach Maher la 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 la. Now we travel down the M40 to Buckinghamshire, to the South Backs Jewish community.
The Kabbalists of Tzfat were inspired by the idea of Shabbat being like a bride that they could welcome into their midst, so much so that Shlomo Alkabetz composed his great song that we will shortly sing, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala. And the psalms around Lecha Dodi remind us also of the natural world, the majesty of it, and our place within it, and how just as God rested on the seventh day and created menucha, repose and rest, so too do we rest from our creative activities. I'm standing here in Buckinghamshire next to the Grand Union Canal, the rabbi of SBJC South Bucks Jewish community. And the canal also reminds us of what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel describes as technical civilization, our ability to conquer space. And yet we know that conquering space is never really truly possible. And Shabbat reminds us, in fact the canals also remind us, of our place within the natural world, the symbiotic relationship that we have with that world, the delicate balance that is at play all of the time. So on this Shabbat, as we pause for the Psalms and for our service, we're reminded of the natural world, the majesty that Buckinghamshire actually offers us to see the natural world in its full splendour. And we take stock, and we pause, and we breathe deeply.
Come, let us sing to the Eternal One. Let our song ring out to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into God's presence with thanksgiving. Let us acclaim our God with songs of praise. For you, Eternal One, are a great God, a sovereign, great above all other gods.
The depths of the earth are in your hand, and the mountain peaks are yours. The sea is yours, you made it. The dry land is the work of your hands. Come, let us bow down in worship. Let us bend the knee before our Maker. You are our God and our shepherd. We are your people and your flock. Today the world would be redeemed if only we would listen to your voice.
We continue now with Lecha Dodi, the song which Neil mentioned earlier, composed by Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz in the 16th century, whose words cause us to look forward to a time when the light of God will shine anew, bringing a time of peace when the world will be redeemed.
שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. בראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת קבלה, בני שבת לקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת קבלה, בני שבת לקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת, בני שבת לקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת קבלה, בני שבת לקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת קבלה, בני שבת לקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת קבלה, בני שבת לקבלה.
The Psalm for the Sabbath Day. It is good to give thanks to the Eternal One, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to tell of your love in the morning and your faithfulness in the night, to the sound of lute and harp, and to the music of the lyre.
Your deeds fill me with gladness.
Your work moves me to song.
How great are your works, eternal God.
How very deep your thoughts.
The righteous shall flourish like the palm.
Grow tall like the cedar of Lebanon.
Planted in the house of the Eternal One, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall ever be fresh and green, proclaiming that God is just, my rock, in whom there is no flaw.
All of us at SBJC South Bucks Jewish Community wish you a Shabbat of peace and inspiration on the Liberal Judaism Biennial, as we now travel virtually to our friends in Nottingham and Rabbi Tanya.
Shabbat Shalom from Nottingham. We continue with blessings before the Shema. The first blessing before Shema reminds us about God as creator of the whole world. The second talks about God's love for all of us and each of us. It's good to be reminded how much God loves us so that it helps us to be more positive and creative in our life. And I will continue with the piece from Margie Peace's poem. Shema. We should love ourselves, for we are of God. We should love our neighbors as ourselves. We should love the stranger, for we were once strangers in the land of Egypt, and have been strangers in all the lands of the world since. Let love fill our hearts with its clear, precious water. Heaven and earth observe how we cherish or spoil our world. Heaven and earth watch whether we choose life or choose death. We must choose life, so our children's children may live. Be quiet and listen to the still, small voice within that speaks in love. Open to that voice, hear it, heed it, and walk for life. Let us remember and strive to be good. Let us remember to find what is holy, within and without. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'arif harabim, בחוכמה פותח שערים, ובתבונה משנה עיתים, ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור. ומעביר יום ומעביר לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. ברוך אתה אדוני, המרעיף ערבים.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אתה, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני, אלוהינו ושופטנו, וקומנו, נשיאה בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך. כן אדוני, אלוהינו ושופטנו, וקומנו, נשיאה בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך. ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
In Jewish tradition, it's not objects or even buildings that are sacred, but time itself. We mark the holiness sometimes with the help of objects and a building, but the time is holy independent of their use. In a year where we've not been able to meet in our buildings and the time of the working week has largely merged into one, the time held by the holiness of Shabbat allows us moments to break from the monotony and demands that we take time to rest. Let's lean into this moment in the holiness of Shabbat, and let's take a breath together as we elongate that first line of the Shema, and do close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, ושרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We'll continue with some moments quiet, either with your own meditation or reading the words that will come up on the screen. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני Adonai Elohechem. All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone, Eternal One, are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You have freed us from oppressors and delivered us from tyrants. You led us out of Egypt forever to serve you in freedom. When we witnessed your power, we praised your name and gave thanks willingly. We accepted your rule. Then, full of joy, we sang together. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neheda b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei pele, nora tehilot osei pele. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'ema ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, ug'alo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. And let's sing the first line of the Hashkivenu together. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Grant, eternal God, that we may lie down in peace, and let us rise up to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your wise counsel, and for your name's sake be our help. Shield us from sickness and war, from famine and distress, and keep us from wrongdoing. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, for you are our guardian and deliverer, a gracious and merciful God. Guard our going out and our coming in, that now and always we may have life and peace. We praise you, O God. May your sheltering peace descend on us and all who dwell on earth. And we will now go to Oxford Jewish Community with Rabbi Michael Shire.
Thank you, Anna. I have moved from Birmingham to Oxford. I'm proud to represent Oxford as having been their High Holy Day rabbi for the last 14 years. And I invite those people who are in Oxford to wave, say hello to everyone in the Liberal Jewish family. It's wonderful to see you all. I'm still sitting here in Boston, Massachusetts, however. We now come to the central part of our service, the Tefillah or the Amidah. This is the standing prayer, but these days on Zoom, standing might mean something else. Standing could mean standing up for a principle, standing for what is doing what is right, just standing up when we need to be an ally to those in need. Our Tefillah speaks of those who came before us, who stood up or stood by those who knew of what God wanted of them. The rabbis conceived the concept of zechut avot ve'imahot, living in the merit of those of our ancestors who knew God. We speak of Elohei Avraham, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, God of Abraham, God of Rebekah, God of Rachel, as if they each had different perspectives of God's presence and influence. Each knew God's purpose for their own lives in their own different ways. We today get the benefit of our ancestors' struggle and activism, incredibly handed down for these past 4,000 years. We merit also from those nearer to us as well. And this Shabbat Biennial, I'm thinking especially of Rosita's memory as part of Zechut Imahot, merit of our matriarch. She stood up for liberal Judaism's values and virtues, breaking down walls for small communities and individuals of Jews, enabling us to become a true family by creating this very biennial and leading us to become a voice for change in Anglo Jewry. We inherit a legacy of her steadfastness, her solid faith of liberal Judaism, and her belief in our strong future as a movement. Her memory stands forth for us tonight as we stand, physically or metaphysically, for the Amidah and the opening benediction. Read with me the first paragraph of the Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imahot ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. God is known in many ways. God's presence is perceived in many dimensions. And in the second paragraph of the Amidah, we address God from the feminine perspective. את גבורה לעולם חוויה, מחיה מתים את רבה להושיע, משיבה הרוח ומורידה הגשם, מזריחה השמש ומורידה הטל, מכלכלת חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומכת נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתירה אסורים, מקיימת אמונתה לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעלת גבורות, ומי דומה לך? גבורה ממיתה, ממחיה ומצמיחה ישועה, ונאמנת את לחיות מתים. ברוכה את חוויה, מחיה המתים. You are holy, awesome is your name. We have no God but you. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We praise you, Eternal One, the Holy God. And now we go to Rabbi Miri Lawrence, my friend and colleague at Ealing Liberal and Reading Liberal.
Thank you, Michael. As we consider inclusivity this weekend, I'm mindful that this past year has magnified the challenges for those who feel on the margins of society and community life. As a parent of a young adult with autism, I've experienced firsthand the ways in which those with learning difficulties and mental health problems have felt isolated and lost access to vital support structures, including family and social connections. A number of national campaigns have addressed the difficulties for these people, with a particular focus on loneliness and isolation. The difficulties experienced by those with disabilities have been framed in negative terms by a number of leading charities. Sense launched their Left Out of Life campaign, and the National Autistic Society's report, which they entitled Stranded, spoke of the forgotten families affected by autism during this pandemic. The titles of these campaigns resonated for me because every single day during the 3 lockdowns, my son phoned me and begged me to just come and see him, no matter how many times I explained the rules during the pandemic. I also know of many other families who described a similar feeling of desertion by their loved ones. As we consider inclusivity this weekend, my hope is that we can build on the work that Liberal Judaism has done up until this point to include all of those who, for whatever reason, feel left out of life, stranded, and forgotten. May we embrace all members of our community within the family of Liberal Judaism, especially as we emerge out of lockdown. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רוצי ומנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. ספרנו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך. ותהל ליבנו, ותהל ליבנו לעובדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון, שבת קודשך, שבת קודשך. וינוחו בישראל, וינוחו בישראל, מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Eternal God, be gracious to your people Israel, and in your love accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. We praise you, O God, whom alone we worship in reverence. Modim anachnu lach, she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Sur chayenu, magen yishenu, ata hu ledovado. Nodeh lecha u'nesaper tehilatecha, al chayenu hamusurim biyadecha. V'al nishmotenu hapukadot lach, v'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu, v'al niflotecha v'tovatecha shebechol et erev v'voker v'sohorayim. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'er lahodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasiem Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasiem Leolam. Ki ata Adon lechol hashalom, ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom, v'tov beinecha levarech et kol ha'amim b'chol leit uv'chol shah b'shlomecha. Baruch atah Adonai oseh hashalom. protect and defend you. May He always shield you from shame. May you come to be in Israel a shining name. May you be like Ruth and like Esther. May you be deserving of praise. Strengthen us, O Lord, and keep us from the stranger's ways. May God bless you and grant you long life. May the Lord fulfill your Sabbath prayer for you. May God keep you shield you from strife. May in His wisdom always care for you. May the Lord protect and defend you. May the Lord protect and defend May the Lord preserve you from pain. May the Lord preserve you from pain. Favor us, O Lord, with happiness and peace. Oh, hear our Sabbath prayer.
We now continue with a few moments for a silent prayer or meditation.
Say shalom, Biroma, Uyase, Shalom Aleichem, Ve'al
We now are moving just down the road from me to Kingston Liberal Synagogue, where I'm delighted to introduce my friend and colleague, Rabbi Rene Fertzel, who, along with Rabbi Rebecca Burke, are co-chairs of the Conference of Liberal Rabbis and Cantors, and Rene will be leading our Devar Torah.
Shabbat Shalom. You were probably expecting both co-chairs of a conference of liberal rabbis and cantors to address you tonight. But as the Yiddish proverb says, man tracht und Gott lacht. We make plans and God laughs. Sadly, Rabbi Rebecca is unable to join us tonight due to health issues. She's very sorry about that, and she sends her apologies. But her doctors ordered her full rest. She will be back with us very soon, renewed and regenerated. In the meantime, Rebecca, we send you our love and our prayers for healing. Rabbi Rebecca and I discussed extensively about this Dvar Torah. What I am going to say is a result of this conversation, and you will also hear her voice, even though I think her English accent is slightly better than mine. Parashat Emor, this weekly parasha, begins with very strict rules concerning the Kohanim, the priests, from the lineage of Aaron. For example, they cannot get close to a dead body, they cannot marry a divorcee, and so on. And the Torah to explain, they shall be holy to their God, and they shall not desecrate their God's name. We know that in other parts of the Jewish community, the division between Kohen, Levi, and Israel is still relevant, but not in our communities anymore. 10 years ago, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, which is the Conference of American Progressive Rabbis in the United States, North America, and elsewhere in the world, issued a rabbinic responsa, a rabbinic statement on this subject. Reform Judaism, as we could say, progressive Judaism, does not recognize a hereditary priesthood. This statement describes a fundamental aspect of our religious worldview. It means specifically that the tradition of priestly status is irrelevant to us as a religious category and plays no role whatsoever in Reform Judaism's observance today. Our common Reform practice testifies to this fact. In our communities, the Kohen receives none of the privileges to which he is entitled under traditional Jewish law and custom. Most notably, we have long since abolished the practice of granting him the first aliyah, that is, of calling him to the Torah prior to anyone else. By the same token, we do not enforce any of the stringencies that traditionally apply to the priest in matters regarding marriage and ritual purity. Since we do not look forward to the rebuilding of a temple and the resumption of sacrificial worship, we have no purpose or interest in perpetuating caste distinctions based in the ancient biblical codes. And in the absence of such a purpose or interest, it would arguably be unethical for us as a movement dedicated to an egalitarian vision of Judaism to maintain such distinctions in any form. What a perfect example on how progressive Judaism operates. We study, we question our tradition, and then we come to a conclusion. By its very nature, Judaism is progressive. Judaism has always been progressive. It is a work in progress, and no generation can pretend to hold the ultimate truth. But this freedom does not give us the license to do anything. We wanted to illustrate it with another rabbinic story, this time taken from the Talmud of Babylon, Bava Metzia 62a, and I quote, "If two people are traveling together in the desert, and one of them possesses a jug of water such that if both drink, both will die, but if only one of them drinks, he will reach civilization and live." This was the view of Ben Petora. It is better for both of them to drink and both of them to die, so that one of them does not see his friend die. Until Rabbi Akiva came and taught, "Let your kinsman live with you," which implies that Your life takes precedence over your friend's life. End of quote. Despite the conclusion it has reached, this passage raises more questions than it answers this ethical conundrum. Why is it only limited to two options? Have they explored all other possibilities? Maybe they could have waited another day or two to see if there was water somewhere. Or maybe simply some situations cannot find the resolution we'd like to find. If we want to break down walls, we cannot escape this constant questioning and re-evaluating of our tradition. I think we all agree that breaking down walls is a positive drive and a very progressive drive as well. But how? What are the underlying ethical principles? This process does not come without its challenges. There is the risk to try to follow the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, without any critical approach. And then we are at risk to follow the current trends of our noisy world and to see simply our voice being lost and fading away in the noise. We are also at risk to build other walls which we haven't thought about before. When we break down walls, what else do we risk breaking? Rabbi Rebecca drew my attention to an article published in the Times last Sunday, the 25th of April. India Knight wrote a piece entitled "Cancel Culture Brings Out the French Resistance." In this article, India Knight discusses cancel culture that she defines this way. Hardly anyone dares to stick their head up anymore, anywhere, especially if they are famous, and especially if they are a woman, even to express mild dismay or to ask a question. End of quote. A Princeton academic, philosopher Peter Singer, has created an academic journal called the Journal of Controversial Ideas, which allows its academic contributor to submit paper pseudonymously if they wish, to protect themselves from threats to their careers or physical safety. In the 16th century, the French writer François Rabelais wrote, "Science without conscience is but the ruin of the soul." We could paraphrase Rabelais by saying today, breaking down walls, implementing change without a strong ethical spine defeats the very purpose of it. Just as our forebears understood the limitations and exclusivity of a priesthood, so now we are understanding more nuances, more identities, and more call for breaking down walls that prevented us before. But Rabbi Rebecca and I hope to introduce a breath of caution. Let's tread carefully. As Jews, we are very privileged. We are the heir of an age-old tradition that has taught us, if anything else, to question assumptions, to challenge stereotypes, to see beyond our unconscious biases, and continually seek, as Amor calls us to be holy. On behalf of Rabbi Rebecca and myself, I wish you all a meaningful conference, and may we all leave this virtual space with a renewed sense of purpose and imbued with a positive energy that emanates from our movement. Ken Yeh Ratzon. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the sanctuary of Southgate Progressive Synagogue, our Liberal Judaism community in North London, and our spiritual home for the past 78 years. We have now reached the concluding part of the Shabbat evening service, and we'll continue with the Aleinu and Kaddish. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו.
אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי הבאים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצא הארץ, ומושבך לו בשמיים ממעל, ושינה תוצו וגפה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אלות, אמש מגנו אפס זולתו, קרקעתו וזולתו, ידעת היום להשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, השמיים ממעל, והארץ וישעתנו. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, כי יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
We continue with the meditation before the Kaddish, with the reading of a poem by the Israeli poet Zelda. Each of us has a name given us by God and by our father and mother. Each of us has a name given us by our stature and smile and by the clothes we wear. Each of us has a name given us by the mountains and the walls within which we live. Each of us has a name given us by the planets and by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given us by the sea and by the way we die. And today we especially remember our family, friends, and members of our communities who passed away at this time in years gone by. We also remember our rabbis, teachers, youth leaders, and those who played leadership roles in our communities and in Liberal Judaism, and who are no longer in our midst. In the following moment of silence, you're welcome to post names of your loved ones in the chat. Zichronam livracha, may their memory be for a blessing. And we honor their names with the praise of God's name, with the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, ve'alma divera chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye d'chol bet Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמד קודשה בריחו, לאל אמין כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שיריה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל בני אדם, ואמרו אמן. We conclude with the Ladino version of the Enke Eloheinu, performed by Liberal Judaism singers and musicians, followed by Rabbi Sandra Kviet of Kehilat Shir HaTzafon in Denmark, who will lead us with the Kiddush.
Enek Eloheinu, Enek Adonenu, Enek Malkeinu, Enek Moshienu, non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Mich Eloheinu, mich Adonenu, mich Malkeinu, mich Moshienu, ken como nuestro Dios, ken como nuestro Señor, ken como nuestro Rey, ken como nuestro Salvador. No del Eloheinu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu. Lo haremos a nuestro Dios, lo haremos a nuestro Señor, lo haremos a nuestro Rey, lo haremos a nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Bendicho nuestro Dios, bendicho nuestro Señor, bendicho nuestro Rey, bendicho nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Tú sos nuestro Dios, tú sos nuestro Señor, tú sos nuestro Rey, tú sos nuestro Salvador.
Shabbat Shalom. Må vi have en rigtig fantastisk og dejlig Shabbat og en dejlig Biennial. Shabbat Shalom in Danish to everyone across the British Isles, as well as our communities in Copenhagen and in Amsterdam. We have reached the end of the service. We have reached the Kiddush. So please make sure that you have your wine ready as well as your challah. We have blessed a lot tonight. We have said blessings. We have thought of those who have made us who we are and who have made us into the blessings, hopefully, that we can be for others. So let us take a moment to actually bless each other. If you have the Siddur in front of you on page 563, let us do the community blessings. And as we do this, either look at somebody in the room with you or look at somebody on the screen so that we truly can bless by looking at each other. May God bless us and guide us. Let us seek truth, make peace, be kind and courteous in our words, just and loving in our deeds. A noble heritage has been entrusted to us. Let us guard it well. Let us all say together, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'eh Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Let us thank God for our families and for our communities, for the bonds of love and loyalty and friendship which unites us and which keeps us close together in spirit, even when we are far apart. May we be modest in what we demand, generous in what we give, gentle in what we say this weekend, and considerate in all that we do. So may our homes and our communities be a place of security and happiness for us, of welcome and friendship for visitors, and a sanctuary worthy of the divine presence. Please raise your glasses and join me. ויחולו השמיים והארץ בכל צבעם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת עם כל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. L'chaim, everyone. Let us now take our challah, and if you have one, let's raise it high so we can all share, either physically or in thought, bread together. And let us say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And those who don't have it can say, Amen. And for now, what is left to say is Shabbat Shalom, ein fantastisk Biennial, and let us all share, learn, and enjoy this wonderful weekend together. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom all. Thank you to everybody who just led the most beautiful Kabbalat Shabbat service. I'm Rabbi Leah Jordan, one of the co-chairs of Biennial, and I just wanted to make a couple of announcements here at the end of our Shabbat service. The first is that in about 8 minutes at 7:30, Rabbi B'nai Lappi is going to be in this Zoom room giving us a keynote speech that I'm very excited to hear, and there'll also be space and time with her for discussion and questions and conversation. So it should be both something where we hear from her and we get a really interactive talk at 7:30 here in 7 minutes. And originally, we thought we might have time to do a bit of a meet and greet with our chair, Ruth Seeger, during this time. But we decided we wanted to give her really the full amount of time and for us to get a chance to really meet her properly. So we've moved that to tomorrow dinner, is what I understand. So come back here to dinner tomorrow during Biennial to meet and greet with Ruth Seeger. And so Rabbi B'nai will be on at 7:30, and then at 9:30, Rabbi Judith Rosenberry will be speaking to us about the theology of inclusivity and of liberal Judaism, and asking us a lot of questions about Biennial and about our lives. And I'm looking forward to that at 9:30. So thanks all so much, and Shabbat Shalom.